San Diego, the undisputed craft beer capital of America. A culture inspired by the city's laid-back vibes and adventurous spirit. Join journalist and beer enthusiast Vince Meehan as we tour the most innovative local breweries, hear from their founders, and of course, taste some brews. These are the people who made San Diego a beer mecca. This is SD Craft Masters.
All right, another fun episode of SD Craft Masters. We are here in Vista at Eppig. Do you know how long I have been wanting to be here at Eppig? But here we are, here in Vista. We're here with Clayton LeBlanc, a co-founder and also a brewer, right?
Yep, a little bit of everything nowadays.
And I just, like I said, Eppig's been one of my favorite. Everywhere I go to Second Chance, I go to Fall, I go to everybody. And when I mention your name, oh yeah, they're the best. They're the best. We've got medals. Every time there's a kissing your ass.
Stop.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just, everybody knows that you guys are the best. And I actually went to your tasting room back in probably like 2016 on El Cajon Boulevard in North Park.
Mm-hmm.
There's three little, quiet little bungalows in a row. There was with two other ones, I forget who they were. But when I went to Eppig, I was like, this is great beer. Great beer. I like the kind of German style. And everybody knows that when you have the award ceremony, you guys are winning. So what's the secret? What is the secret?
Well, I think we've got fertile soil here in San Diego. Both myself and Nathan learned under some really smart people a lot about beer, combined with studying on your own, having the collective brain of San Diego where our friends who are brewers at other places and the collaboration that comes from sharing information. We had a generation before us that kind of had some awesome breweries. We worked at those breweries and now we've gone out on our own and continued that work. And San Diego is like always, I think, pushing towards the top, always working towards the top of, oh, we've had lovely beer for a while. Well, how can I make that beer better? And then you make that beer and then you go, how can I make that beer better? And collectively, if all the 150 breweries in San Diego are pursuing that, you're gonna probably have pretty good results.
And you and your partner, Nate, you started in Ballast Point, right?
Yeah, we both entered into the brewing world. I had been trying to get into grad school, and I was a server and a bartender at Karl Strauss, which is kind of where I fell in love with craft beer. That was a job for me in the beginning, and then it became a passion towards the end. And simultaneously, Nate was doing engineering work and had a passion for cooking and for beer as well. He can tell you about that. And we both sort of were like, maybe this is what we want to do. Maybe grad school's not really where I want to be. I was seeing it as an opportunity. Well, if I get to the end of that, I will have a profession that is what I want to do. And I really fell in love with this. And, I was at that point in my life where I was like, maybe it's the thing you're in love with is the thing you should do. Money be damned, and, and see where it takes you. And that was the jumping off point. And then it was Ballast Point for years as a brewer. Nate was there as well. We started around the same time, and he became the research and development brewer there down in Little Italy at that space. He commissioned that brewery and created and was able to create so many amazing beers there. And I would, as often as I possibly could, I would go from Scripps Ranch down to Little Italy, and he's got a great mind, and we saw eye to eye on things, and I loved working with him. And it kind of snowballed from there. So.
And you said you went to grad school. What were you studying?
I was trying to get into grads. I was going to be a dentist.
I thought you were going to say like IT or something, because
no.
We talked to so many people that said, oh, I was going to be an accountant, I was going to be in IT, and I decided, no, I'm going to brew beer instead.
I went to school and I got out and I did a few jobs and realized, you know, I have to take this to another level if I really want to progress. And I thought opening my own business would be that answer. From a very ignorant standpoint of like, I don't know what that really means, but if I go to this more education, I will be better qualified. And falling in love with beer, I was able to steer that into, at the time, Ballast Point, which is one of the best breweries in San Diego, and with some of the great minds, and learn. Like I got to learn from really, really good brewers, and a place that really cared about beer. And this is all prior to, you know, things have changed at that company, and they've kind of come full circle. They're back to independent again, but back then they were viciously independent, and you know, the founding members were there, and we were all part of that team doing a lot of creation. And every day was to the wall learning, you know. And when we came out of the back end of that, it was like, okay, I think we're more in a position to. Every brewer wants to have their own place.
And here we are at Eppig. And I got to tell you, I love the area because you're in Vista.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, you know, I live in California, and there's places like Paso Robles and Los Olivos, where it's kind of like a little bit inland. You know that the ocean's right there, but it's really kind of a cool vibe. You're up on the top of the mesa, and there's something in the air, and when you add all the stone and the wood and everything, it's a really cool vibe, and just a beautiful tasting area.
What I love about Vista, we're so close to Carlsbad, we're so close to Oceanside. We're down a valley, which the viewers right now, you can't see, but if we were to turn the cameras around, there's a long valley. And when the marine layer is over the edge of the ocean, the sunsets here are like this electric orange all the way back over the brewery. And we get the ocean breeze. In the summertime, we get the heat, but then it cools off at night, which is really nice, which makes nice for sitting on the patio, hanging out, drinking beer garden-y type beer, which is the kind of the beers that we like to make. So that and Vista is home to the big buildings, which we needed a big building, and Vista was very welcoming.
If you're looking for a big building, you come to Vista.
Dude, look at Vista, man. They are helpful. I mean,
so now here we are at Eppig. Go ahead and tell me, you know, what was that jump, and what was it like to go out on your own?
Yeah. Why do you leave one of the best brewing jobs you can have in San Diego and go out on your own with all the risks? Well, it was a really cool backstory. So we're Eppig Brewing. Our other partners are Todd and then Stephanie Eppig. And the Eppig family had been a group of brewers who had moved to Brooklyn in the 1860s.
Oh.
1860s.
Really?
And they were from Bavaria. And they moved to Brooklyn, New York, and they opened a brewery. And it went through a couple generations. They opened a couple breweries. They did lager brewing all throughout kind of the greater Brooklyn area. If you can imagine in the 1860s, you know, your distribution would have been limited to horse and carriage. So you could probably open another brewery a few miles away and do the same sort of thing. And they succeeded for about 70 years doing that, up to and through Prohibition. And through a mutual friend, I met Todd and Stephanie, and she kind of started metering out this story to me about lager brewing, and we're talking 2014, 2015. Nobody's really making lagers at the time. Maybe in San Diego you would have had Carl Strauss was doing some. And maybe every brewery had one or two beers that would pop out from time to time, but nobody kind of focusing on that. And Nate and I were really fascinated by what we would call like the original session beers, which are kind of the Germanic stuff, and then some of the English stuff too, the lower ABV, your Kolsch's, your alt beers, your Schwartz beers, Pilsner, Helles, and those are the beers, while we were working and making some big IPAs, which we all love, especially here in San Diego, the beers that really were speaking to us as the night went on were finding really well-crafted, lighter beers. So Stephanie's telling us the story about her history, about the success they had, about, and you know, the trends are changing, IPAs are getting bigger and bigger, people are starting to add fruit to everything. Well, the brewing community, we were really interested in kind of what we're drinking here. We're drinking Fest beer now, we're drinking Kolsch.
I've heard that from everybody. It's kind of coming around to basically the OG of beers, right?
And and maybe even a decade ago, you were still hearing things like save the ales and, getting away from yellow fizzy beer. That was like a Stone thing for a while. Well, the truth is, there's two kinds of beer. There's ales and there's lagers. Well, there might be Kolsch there too, which kind of falls in a weird slot. But with those two, there's a ton of both of those kinds. Right. Tons of ales, tons of lagers. And kind of craft had been more focusing on, especially in San Diego, it's going to be the ale-y side of the world. Yeah. Well, 2014, 2015, you think you want to open a brewery? How are you going to be different? Well, this is our thing. We've got a true family story with a cool family logo of an eagle holding a barrel on a rope that's the legitimate family logo from the 1860s. We have documentation, we have old bottles that has it on there, and they showed them to me when we were just, there was a point where we were just on a napkin. We were an idea. And I was, you're kidding me, like that exists and we can have that? Wow, what a great way to launch ourselves, from the mothership that we had been working at, differentiate ourselves by making beers we really like to make and bet that people would also want to drink because they just didn't have access to them. It was either big beer, big macro beer, or craft IPA.
I think that explains a lot because I was going to ask you, what's the secret of Eppig? But it may be just that very simple mind frame of like going back to the original German roots. I mean, when you think about beer, there's Italian beers, there's Czech beers, but most people think about German beers.
Yep.
And I remember back in those days, I was covering an area and I wanted to see some original German beers. And I think Paul at Longshore Beer, he did a little bit of German beers too, and you guys are like right down the street. So I found you two guys, I'm going like, this is really good. Now the proof's in the pudding. You're winning all the awards, you've got all the accolades. So the, that policy really paid off, didn't it?
It did, and there's a lot of talented brewers and a lot of talented minds. When you really focus on a thing that you're interested in, you're going to get better at it. You're going to improve. You're going to start at one place, and if you've done it for 6 months or a year, hopefully I always say, honing that blade. Sharpening and sharpening, because there already was good beer here, and then you do more research, you read more, you learn more, you talk to more compatriots and brewers in the world. Compile that information and find, what works in your house, what works in your brew house. And we've just continued to do that, and I'm glad people like it.
We've got also, you've got a tasting room down in Point Loma.
Yeah.
I've been there, beautiful. I mean, just right on the water, you see the boats and everything. New one in La Jolla, so let me know a little bit about these tasting rooms that are going out there. Oh, Orange County too, right?
Yeah, It's been a busy year. We had a couple weird years in there.
Yeah.
And we've kind of launched 2022 full throttle.
There you go.
We had always been looking for another tasting room, and in 2018 we had opened our tasting room in Point Loma. It's right on the water, America's Cup Harbor, right next to Shelter Island. It overlooks downtown. You're right by the airport. It is one of the best places to drink beer, period.
Absolutely.
And we didn't invent the harbor. We got lucky and we found the building that had this, literally you can sit on the fence and you're overlooking the water and all the boats. So it's not a restaurant, but you can go down there, bring food from Point Loma Seafoods, Mitch's Seafoods. We got pizza places all around, and drink on the water. And then we're up here in Vista. We're in our tasting room now that you can kind of see right here. This is the mothership where all the beer gets made.
Right.
It is a lovely view. We've got kind of this green space here. If you want to see where the beer's made,
that's why we're here.
Where we grind it all together, you can come here. And then 2 weeks ago, we just opened our La Jolla tasting room. And for those of you from out of town, or even those in town who like to take a vacation to La Jolla, right on Prospect, where kind of all the restaurants and bars are. We found a property that was available, and the guy was willing to let us open a tasting room there. So we've got a nice small tasting room where people can come and try our beers, and they don't have to drive all the way up to Vista if they live down by the beach. And that just opened 2 weeks ago, and it just got going. So we're very excited about that. And you mentioned Orange County. Earlier this year, we had always distributed our own beer, like with me driving the truck. We brew in the morning and then get in the truck and go deliver in the afternoon. And then we were making more and more beer and we needed help. And so this year we signed on with a distribution company where they come, they pick up our beer, and they have now distributed it to all of San Diego. And then we just this past month, creeped into Orange County. We intentionally had never gone outside of San Diego before. It's very important for us to keep our hands on the beer. You don't ever want this beer to go sit in a warm warehouse in Poughkeepsie. It can sit in a cold warehouse in Poughkeepsie, but until we have the bandwidth to make sure that that's actually happening, we're trying to grow very much at home and then kind of grow a little bit at a time, a controllable amount. Because if our reputation is the things you were talking about, if that's what we're known for,
Yeah.
Any sort of greed where you forego the
can wipe that out
the maintenance of the
immediately.
beer, because I loved meeting people and talking to people, but if we have a nice conversation and then this doesn't work,
Yeah.
what's the point?
Or if this doesn't work, it's been sitting out there in the
Yeah.
hot sun somewhere,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden somebody buys this and they're like, I don't know what Vinny was talking about. You know?
Imagine that's somebody's first experience with
Yeah.
your beer.
And they're never gonna buy it again.
And somewhere in a boardroom, somebody decided we're just going to grow without the controls to preserve the. A lot of work goes into making this be the way it is, and it takes one little factor to ruin that. So the more that we can, with control, grow, which is a very Eppig and very Germanic sort of way of growth, we ensure that every time we take a step in growth, that the beer is protected all the way to the customer.
All right, we got one last thing to talk about before we bring the beer out here.
Yeah.
6th anniversary party.
Yeah.
Only been 6 years? Only been 6 years?
Only been 6 years and a million. Yeah. We opened in November 2016.
Yeah.
And we'll have our 6th anniversary on November 19th.
What can we expect?
It'll be here in Vista. We do a big Oktoberfest, which is actually we're having Oktoberfest.
You can see the
you can
Bavarian
see
flags.
It's Oktoberfest season. We have an event here in Vista and also in Point Loma.
We have some fest beer here. We'll talk to.
Yeah, and then as we go towards November, we'll have a special beer coming out, a 6th anniversary beer. It's a secret right now, but I will say that it's a lager, and it might be a little darker than this beer.
Ooh, I think I know what it is, but I'm not gonna spoil the surprise.
It's a secret.
Okay.
It's a secret.
Your secret's safe
So,
with me. But I think I know what it
We've
is.
got that coming. We'll definitely have some music going on,
Nice.
some good food happening, and kind of gather together with the people who supported us from the beginning that enabled this place to happen.
And it's beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. I've gone to a lot of different places. This place is actually a really good place, like you said, for a beer operation. But not only that, it's just the architecture and the decor. Everything looks really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
You bet.
Finally got to get
Thanks,
Eppig
guys.
on here.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking to Nate, and he's going to have some beers for us to taste.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm jealous. I want to drink some beers too.
You
But...
can come back.
All right. Thanks very much.
All right, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll be back with Nate, and he's going to have some Eppig beers. Eppig beers.
Epic beers.
Yeah, there you go. All right, thank you. Hi, it's Vince Meehan. We're back with SD Craft Masters at Eppig. We have Nate Stevens,
Hello.
co-founder, and you're also a brewer as well.
That's right. Yeah.
And everybody knows that Eppig is basically number one. I mean, seriously, everybody
that.
agrees on it. It's not even like an argument. It's just, you've got all the awards. It's just been going on for 6 years now.
It's nice to hear.
Go
that.
right to the top. And, I was thinking maybe there's a big secret about what's going on back there to make, beer so good. I was talking to Clayton, though, and he basically kind of explained that it's just the philosophy of beer making that goes back to the 1800s. German immigrants coming to New York and actually keeping quality control on their beer, because a lot can go wrong. You can make a good beer, you ship it out somewhere, it's hot, ruins the beer, whatnot,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like what's going on here. And so who knew it was that easy? But there's probably more to it than that, and that's got to be your,
A little bit more, yeah.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about your experience with beer.
Yeah, I've been brewing professionally for over 10 years now. Really have developed kind of a philosophy on brewing over those years, and a lot of it, I think, is really, you're able to see it, taste it, smell it in our beer, and a lot of it has to do with balance, drinkability. An important thing for me is that it will pair well with food.
Oh, okay.
And it's just adaptable. Something that like you won't take one sip of or try just once. And you're like, okay, on to the next. Something hopefully can like grab you about each one of our beers that you want to keep kind of going back to and maybe exploring a little bit more.
As you go along, yeah. We've got basically 3 beers here, and you can see by the the color profile, similar. There are different hues in there, but we're looking at basically kind of like a mid color profile here.
Yeah.
We've got the first one is the Fest beer.
Fest beer, yeah.
That is something that is you're pairing it with the Oktoberfest.
Of course. Yeah.
And tell me the reason why.
Yeah. So this is our Fest beer. It's the traditional beer. If you were to go to Munich for Oktoberfest, this is what you would be served, this style of beer. It's 6% ABV, so it's got a little bit more to it than a Pilsner, but the malt is not so forward like a Märzen would be, so it kind of adds to the drinkability. It's not so satiating, I guess you could say.
Okay.
So it's kind of brewed to, you see the big steins at Oktoberfest. It's brewed to be a drink at a volume, I guess you could say.
What kind of beer is it actually?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. It's all German malts, German hops.
It's an ale?
It's a lager.
Oh,
it's a lager.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be mostly Pilsner malt, and then we add a little bit of Vienna, which is kind of like just slightly darker than your Pilsner malt would be, with like a little more toastiness, and then a little Munich malt on top of that, which kind of adds a little bit more of that color and just the extra punch of kind of that little malt flavor that you're going to get. But still not, like I said, not over the top malty, but enough to kind of make it complex enough that you kind of want to keep going back to it, keep it interesting. The hops are a traditional noble hop. It's Tettnang. It's a nice kind of lightly floral, maybe just a tiny bit spicy, but this is not a hop-driven beer, really. Right. It's like I said, we go back to balance, just kind of where you want to be exactly in the sweet spot with where malt and hops kind of come together.
And if we were in Oktoberfest in München, we'd be having one of these pubs.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe more than one.
And I would imagine because it's filled up, you don't want it to lose its pizzazz, so it's got to last for, your 15 or 20 minutes of drinking that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let's taste it here. Smell-wise, got like a cereal component to it, a little bit of toastiness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like a little bit of the Pilsner kind of crackery thing going on, but then absolutely some of that toasted malt character that comes a little bit from the Vienna and then the Munich malts. Like I said, it's just one of those things that kind of lingers on your palate in a good way, and that's kind of a sign of a well-balanced beer.
Absolutely, and I'm getting like at the very end, like a caramel, kind of like the caramelized.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, it's more toasty than caramelized, but it's just like that, just a touch of that sweetness to help balance out the hop bitterness and all that. So everything basically trying to exist in harmony.
And those noble hops that are in there, that for me, a lot of people, when I talk to the brewers, they say like, well, sometimes those noble hops give it like a sulfur compound. For me, I don't know if my taste buds are different, but it's more like a herbal for me, almost like cilantro or sage or something like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely, so I would say it's a herbal. Got some herbal components in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be, just as a personal preference, I'm not a huge fan of sulfur in my beers, so we kind of...
I'm not either. I thought like when they said that, I thought like, that can't be right.
Well, there's a million different types of sulfur, and like there's the
well, I know rotten eggs.
There's the rotten egg sulfur, and then there's also when you hear like a brewer lovingly talk about German beers, they're gonna think more like matchstick sulfur, like when you light a match, just that kind of little puff. That's what they're looking for.
Okay.
For me personally, like I said, we don't really include sulfur as a big component in our beers, and that's by design, just out of personal preference.
Gotcha. Second beer is?
This is Special Lager. So it's an international style lager, kind of based on a traditional Japanese style lager, but it's not really that. It's kind of a coming together of what you would think a macro style Japanese lager would be, and then an American craft beer. So it's 5.8%, which is definitely bigger than any one of the Japanese lagers you'd see generally in the marketplace. And instead, it's brewed with rice. as most Japanese lagers
Oh,
are.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
because
and so rice is a component that helps lighten the body, make the beer kind of finish drier. And yes, that's true, but the rice component we use also does add like a rice component to the flavor and aroma of the beer. And we actually paired that with Centennial hops, like a big Whirlpool edition of Centennial hops, which are known as like citrus leaning towards lemony.
Really?
So it has kind of this kind of starchy sushi rice, kind of lemon blossom, lemon zest aroma
Sounds like
going
something
on.
good for summer.
It's honestly good anytime. One of my favorites.
Now, for everybody, we have a new feature in SD Craft Masters. Announcing it today. It's Denny's Stupid Questions. But the thing is, it's because sometimes people are afraid to ask.
Sure.
And I do know that, I was going to ask you about that because I found out Mexican lagers, the difference is they'll put corn in there. Mm-hmm. So Japanese lager, they're going to put some rice in there.
A little bit of rice is traditional, yeah.
Okay.
But it's kind of, Japanese lagers are brewed very much in kind of the German lager tradition as well. So this is kind of the coming together of a few of those things, German lager tradition, some of the traditional ingredients you'd maybe use in a Japanese style lager, but this is kind of our take on that, like bumping up the ABV, definitely a larger aroma component than you would normally have. And so it's just kind of a nice coming together of those different worlds with the craft and the macro. It's something that really kind of can satisfy you anytime.
What I like about this, you're right about that, citrus component. I mean, and not only that, but you say it's floral as well. I used to live in San Bernardino, and it's the last place basically in California where they still have orange.
Orange blossom.
Yeah. And when,
Yeah.
a certain time of year, you go driving past there and you get that wonderful smell. That's what it smells like.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm not even tasting it. I'm just enjoying the smell.
Yeah, and it's super light, super dry. Just an awesome food beer too. Just great with seafoods, Italian foods, summer vegetables and
You're
things
right.
like that. It's
really
just,
light body to it. Very crisp and refreshing.
Yeah.
Smooth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this is one of our. This is a year-round lager.
I keep getting that, a little bit of the lemon zest and the floral notes. It's really beautiful. I mean, that's part of the secret. I don't know what you guys are doing back there, but there's some sort of, do you have any, obviously quality control is one thing, but it seems like Eppig goes beyond that. It's gotta be, you and Clayton are doing something back there, some sort of magic.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a lot of science, it's a lot of engineering. It's about respecting the ingredients that you use, respecting the tradition that, we're basically...
So you don't cut corners with cheaper stuff, right?
No, and that's part of our ethos is no compromises when it comes to making the best beer.
Well, that may be the answer right there. So all you people wanting to cut corners, don't do it. You're not gonna win any of these awards. Last beer, what do we have here?
Yeah, this last one is 1045 Denver. It's a West Coast IPA.
One more of Vinny's Stupid Questions?
Sure.
And it's, like I said, I'm not trying to be funny here, but a lot of times, people just don't know.
Sure.
So I'll ask the stupid question so you don't have to later on. West Coast IPA, East Coast IPA, what is the difference?
The distillation of it is a West Coast IPA is generally going to be mostly bright or clear in your glass. East Coast is known for the haziness in the glass. West Coast is going to have a more assertive hop bitterness. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, it was probably a little too much, kind of like the palate wrecker. But now it's a little bit drawn back, but still absolutely more assertive hop-wise than a New England would. And then the New England is kind of when you hear about like the juicy, like more of like the orange and tropical and things like that. Whereas West Coast really became known for like that pine, resiny, kind of danky aroma. Yeah.
There you go, people. I had to ask for you. You can thank me later.
Yeah, and so 1045 is kind of an ode to San Diego craft brewing. San Diego kind of made its mark in the beer world by making West Coast IPAs, beers that were dry, super hoppy, dank, resin pine, just like we talked about. But the style has evolved, and so when you see most West Coast IPAs these days, they're actually going to be probably in line with like the Fest beer or the special lager, just totally, the malt has been completely removed from the equation flavor-wise. Really light blonde color most of the time. So 1045 has kind of the coming together of the two worlds, the old and the new, as far as San Diego West Coast IPAs go. So a little bit of color, that nice kind of orange hue, golden hue, but not a ton of caramel, a little bit, just enough to balance that hop profile. So this is a really well-balanced IPA in my opinion. The dry hop is hand-selected Mosaic and Cascade. Mosaic is a super pungent, powerful hop, tropical, dank, all those things that you want in an IPA. And the Cascade really complements it in the fact that it kind of draws it back in, adds that classic pine character and a little bit of that kind of pithy grapefruit that you'd come to expect from like a Cascade hop.
And Cascade hops are grown up in the Northwest. That's where you got that kind of normal, that piney feel that is normal for the IPA that first came out.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Mosaics, I think. Well, we'll find out. I'm trying to get a little bit more familiar with the hops. I think the Mosaics have a kind of like a wild canyon to them, where like sage and stuff in there. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I'll find out.
Well, here's the thing. So you can have Mosaic hops, right? But they could be grown on a different farm or in a different state or even a different part of that same hop yard. And they're going to have different conditions, maybe a little less water, a little more sun. But the hop is affected by the environment, basically. So not all hops are the same. When you just see the word Cascade hops, well, you can sample maybe 4 or 5 different lots of Cascade and get completely different profiles out of them. So that's why when I say hand-selected, we make sure to find a lot that has the attributes that we're looking for.
Now, they did the same thing in the wine world. They'll have a vineyard out there.
Sure, yeah.
And if you get the select lot, that's the $200 bottle.
It's all agriculture too. So, but yeah, wine, you have the grapes, but here we're dealing with barley and hops. So it's just more variables added into the equation.
Well, when I'm smelling it, it's not overpowering at all. So maybe I was wrong about the hops. Usually a lot of times I get a lot of that like canyon sage smell. Not a whole lot of dankness to it, but let's see what's going on here in the taste. Ooh, that is so balanced. That is so balanced. I mean, I've never really got amazed by an IPA because they're everywhere and everyone's making them, but this is just like, you're right, the balance.
This one is, so 1045 I like to think of kind of like as home base, So it's fun to go out and explore and try all the new things and everything, but this is one that you can always pick up a 4-pack of, keep it in your fridge, and you're never really gonna get tired of it, just like you said, just because of the balance, it's just kind of, it's there for you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot IPAs, sometimes they can be oily, and then so you drink it and all of a sudden you're left with like a bunch of oil in the back of your mouth. This here, it's so well balanced that there's none of that like aftertaste. It's just like, what do you call that? It's just like, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's making me cry.
This is also another wonderful food beer, great with just a cheeseburger or another interesting pairing I've found over the years with it. It's awesome with blue cheese.
That sounds great. That sounds great to me because when you do eat something pungent like blue cheese, you don't want something to compete with it. You're not going to have a heavy beer with a heavy cheese. You just want something to kind of refresh your palate.
Yeah, helps cut through it.
Yeah, so a cheeseburger with Rutherford cheese.
There you go. That'd be ideal.
One last thing we're going to talk about is cold IPA. You got one coming out?
Sure. Yeah. It's one of those kind of new styles that, for the most part, nobody really knows what it means, and so it's more or less my understanding of it is it's kind of the coming together of lager brewing and IPA brewing too, which is kind of the two of the things that we do. So basically, we decided to it's just going to be an all draft release. It comes out in a couple weeks, but it's going to be about like just over 7%. That like brew it where it's kind of, if you took maybe something like special lager, just that really light base, not a lot of malt character at all to it. It's just kind of everything is restrained. Let the hops speak, so to speak. And so it's going to be one of those things where it'll have a different kind of profile in the fact that, yes, you can tell that it's still a lager because it's brewed in the same fermentation profile we would do with our lagers. It's a Pilsner base malt profile, so there is a little bit of crackeriness there too in the background, but then we dry hop it like we would our IPAs. So it's going to have strata hops, mosaic, it's going to have like citrus aromas, tropical, a little dank, all those things. It's going to be really good. I'm excited about it. It's not done yet, but when it is, that's probably what I'm going to be drinking for a while.
Sounds wonderful. Well, hey, thank you for talking to us.
Absolutely.
This is,
Thanks for coming by.
I mean, I've been a fan of yours since the beginning. I guess it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
I thought it was longer than that, but I mean, to come this far in 6 years. So with the cold IPA, when's that getting released? In November?
No, I think maybe off the top of my head, probably look for it in 2 or 3 weeks. So.
Oh, okay.
So the end of September, early
And they're
October.
not going to can it. They're just going to have it here.
Not this time. So this is just a draft. This is just kind of to see how it goes, and then we'll go.
You got to come on down here. So we're in Vista, Eppig. Will it be available at the?
All our locations.
Okay,
yeah.
well then you don't actually have to come. I would recommend it because this is just a great place. And one thing I forgot to mention is you do have that beer hall in the back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is rentable for
private
occasions.
event space, all that.
You want to
all
get
those good
married?
things.
Come on down to Eppig.
Yeah, we've had a few weddings.
Yeah, and they got their own. There's 2 taps right there, so you don't have to go back and forth. You just have your own tap there.
Yep.
And right now it's set up for Oktoberfest, and I've been to Bavaria, I've been to München, and it's authentic. That's what it looks like over there. You know? It has to be. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We finally got it here at SD Craft Masters Eppig, and couldn't be happier. Come on down here. This is the brew house. This is the tasting room in Vista. It's beautiful. I mean, this is the place to go. If you can't come up here, you go to La Jolla.
Yep.
You go to Point Loma.
Mm-hmm.
You're up in the OC. Sorry about that, but if you do, then you go up there to the new. Actually, where's it located?
Well, we don't have a tasting room up there, but we are
okay.
distributed up there now too. So you'll be able to find us. Yeah.
Well, it'll happen within a year, I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Probably the way it's going here.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. This is another great episode of SD Craft Masters. I'm Vince Meehan, and we are out of here.